Okay, let's take a look at on-screen modifiers in the iPad version of Photo. So, if you've used desktop image editing applications before, you're probably familiar with modifier keys. Usually you hold down Ctrl, Alt or Command to modify a tool's behavior temporarily. Now, we can offer this on the iPad version of Photo, but you have to specifically enable it. So, for example, if I'm editing an image and I go into, say, the selections persona here, select the Smart Selection brush, I don't have any modifier options. In order to enable those though, I can go back to the home screen here, and then in the top right corner, tap the Preferences icon. Then under Interface here, I can toggle the option for on-screen modifier keys. Okay, so I can tap Done, and then move back to the image I was editing. Now this time, once again, moving over into the Selections persona and picking up the selection brush. Down here we can just see a little white disclosure icon. I can tap that and now I have access to modifiers for that tool. So for example, with this image, if I was creating a selection of the castle, like so, and I'd inadvertently selected the foreground detail here, I could, for example, hold down Subtract here with another finger, and then I can just swipe across to remove from the selection, like so. We also have the option for toggle snapping. Now by default the selection brush smart snaps to edges that it can detect, but let's say we didn't want this behavior temporarily. I'll just fill in that little bit there, because it's not detecting the shrubbery down here very well. Well, we can just hold down toggle snapping and subtract at the same time here, and simply just paint away the areas we don't want. In actual fact, I might decide to pick up a bigger brush for this, so once again I can tap the disclosure icon, increase the brush width, then move back to the modifiers, hold them both down at the same time, and just subtract away out of the areas I don't want. And of course, at any time I could release one of the modifiers, so I'll release the toggle snapping, keeping subtract on, like so. Okay? So I'll just go ahead and clear that selection. Here's another tip. You can two-finger tap anywhere on the canvas to bring up some contextual options. I'll choose Deselect here. And let's look at another tool. So I'll move across to the photo persona here, tap the paintbrush tool, and what shall I do? Let's create a new pixel layer from the Layers Studio here. So I'll tap the plus icon, new pixel layer. In actual fact, I'll go in and set that pixel layer's blend mode to, say, overlay. And while I'm here, I'll bring the opacity down as well, like so. Now, we'll see down here that I've currently got a color set from when I was editing this document previously. But one of the modifier options we have, if we just tap the disclosure icon here again and again to move between all the options and get to the modifiers, we have a color picker. So, as well as having a color picker on the Color Studio over here, if we're in the sort of the heat of the moment, as it were, you can simply just use a modifier to pick a color as you're painting. So for example, you could be painting maybe into this wall here, so what shall I do? I'll use a bigger brush width for this, and then on the fly you can just pick a color like so and then begin painting. Not much of an effect there, so let's pick, say, a brighter red and paint over with that instead, like so. And then if I just talk you through some other options that we have quickly, I'll go ahead and create a new pixel layer for this. And what I'll do is pick up the gradient tool here. So for this, for example, I'll drag from top to bottom. And again, if I tap the disclosure icon here, I can get to my modifiers. So those include constrain, which will constrain the node stops to 45-degree angles, like so. Also, rather than moving the nodes, we can move fill, so we can move the entire fill just by holding down this modifier here, like so. And of course we have ignore snapping, which will ignore the snapping that I've got turned on. Notice I'm no longer getting the green and red snapping lines. Again, if I release ignore snapping down here, we then have snapping again, as we can see by the green line up here. Okay, so just to finish this off, I'll go ahead and set the blend mode of this layer to screen, and then of course I'll want to just quickly modify the colors. So I'll set a black here and leave that at white. Again, I can go in and modify the gradient fill after the fact. So for example, we might choose to ignore snapping, which will allow us to move the nodes freely, and I'll just position it over here somewhere. Okay, so there we go. That was just a brief overview of the on-screen modifiers, how to enable them, and just to give you a couple of quick examples of their use. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the other video tutorials.